Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And subscribing to us on the YouTube, because that's an important fact, because you don't want to miss a show, because you never know, particularly in the beginning, nor do I know what the hell I'm going to say as we wander around in this. Let's get the juices flowing, and I throw it to Camden, and he says something that really doesn't matter, but we're going to throw it to him anyways, because we learned in the green room with our guest, Coach Carrick Pell, that Dad is right. Isn't that right, Camden?
Yeah, I think I got to start trusting you on these pronunciations. Last week with John, and I'm going to butcher it, Macaskill, because I know that's not right, but I can't get
Oh
it
my
right.
gosh.
Now today with Carrick, I'm just going to start listening to you on name pronunciations.
There you go. There you go. Because every time you ask, what happens? I screw it up.
Yep.
I got it right, and then you ask, and you plant the wrong seed in my head, and I go the wrong way. So,
Yes, sir.
speaking of names to pronounce, Carrick, how you doing, man?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Otis. Good to see you, Cam.
Hey, I just gotta jump on this because I'm puzzled. Marine, Recon, and then Air Force. What the hell happened? Did somebody kick you in the jimmy, or what was going on there?
Man, I didn't know this was gonna be an ambush. I when I was in the Marine Corps, we went from after Desert Storm and all the deployments and whatnot. A bunch of the guys I was working with all crossed over to go combat control and pararescue. And when I got out, that was my intent. It took me 6 years to make the transfer over, and once I did, um, it was a good decision. It got me to a different level of my life where I was fortunate enough not to be able to continue training through the combat control NDOC with an ACL tear. And the Air Force gave me an option. They said, you can either get out, you can either go be a meteorologist, or you can sit in the schoolhouse for 2 years. And one of the instructors there said, man, go be a meteorologist. You'll be playing rugby for the Air Force in 6 months. So that's what I did. And funny enough, you can't go on operation, can't jump out of an airplane, but you can go play rugby. So I chose that path. And once my time was done, then I exited. Because, like you said, it definitely wasn't meant for a Marine in the regular Air Force, but we managed, we got through it, and got some great lifelong friends from the rugby community. And fortunate enough, I was able to play against a bunch of guys in the Marine Corps that tried to get me to play rugby at Camp Pendleton in 90, 92, 93. And I still play for them proudly today with the Marine Corps Old Breed team. So that's that.
I'm curious. We've had a lot of vets on the show, but I don't think we've ever had anyone who's been in multiple service branches. What is a little bit of your perspective of making that switch? Or okay, well then I haven't asked this question, Dad. What's a little bit of your perspective of making that switch? We kind of picture these big military bureaucracies. How different was it? What was that adjustment like?
You had the right picture. Definitely. I'm proud to have served in the Air Force, and my time was challenging because of the mindset, which is why they don't typically bring Marine Corps guys over unless there's a specific field. And combat control, pararescue, it's more of a Marine Corps operator type mindset. But the regular Air Force is, and rightfully so, it's officer heavy. It's more of an administrative type driven role. And it's just definitely, if you're wired to be a Marine, especially if you're wired to be an infantry Marine, Recon Marine, the Air Force probably isn't the best option for you. Similarly, if the Air Force is your path, it's probably not a good idea to join the Marine Corps and try to go into Recon. It probably won't work out well for either party. The best part is I got to serve the country 2 different ways, and had a unique experience in terms of leadership and followership. I learned how to be a different type of follower than I had been in the Marine Corps, and it was more challenging actually in the Air Force to do the right things the way they ask you to do them administratively. So I felt like a gorilla in a fish tank at times, or that bull in the china shop. And fortunately, I didn't break too many things, and got out. And proudly, like I said, it's a great opportunity to said I've served two different branches. So.
That's an interesting point you made, and everybody, even folks who don't know, probably have an idea that the Marines, because everybody's seen the commercials, and Air Force, right? Mud, dirt, camo, barbed wire, clean environment, high tech. What did you, because you kind of touched on it, that cultural change. What's a lesson that you could share in stepping into that? Because there's a lot of folks. I mean, I work with a lot of guys getting out of uniform, and that's one of the big things that I try to help them understand is that cultural change that they're stepping into. Could you share with us something that you gained from that, Marine recon to Air Force meteorologist?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Probably a lot of it I don't want to share. No. Best way I can say it is, when you talk about doing things the right way, just because you do it one way doesn't mean it's the way. I, while I was still a little older, I was still young. I went into it with probably a little too much arrogance, not arrogance, maybe confidence and cockiness because of the experience I had. When my team leaders or my supervisor, they call them in the Air Force, asked me to write my bullets, like write your performance review for me. I looked at him like he was out of his mind. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not going to write about me making a correct forecast. That's my job. If I did it well, that's your job. And instead of opening my ears and listening and doing what was part of the culture there, I dug my heels in, I got my foxhole, and I'm like, this is stupid. I don't write my own review. I'm not an egotistical maniac. Like, I could write a review that would just, I could write whatever I wanted. They didn't care. They just sign off on it. But what I would suggest that I learned was, man, if that's your role, if that's your job and that's your mission, forget where you came from or how you got there. Do your job. It's simple. It doesn't require a whole lot to follow instructions. And they say, if the wheel's not broke, don't fix it. And just because I come from a different shop doesn't mean that the wheel doesn't roll the way I roll it. Doesn't mean it's not broken, right? It works fine for the Air Force. Amazing leaders come out of there. Amazing people in the community in all aspects. And I think if I could go back and tell myself a little different, hey, Carrick, you might want to listen to this guy. He's your boss. He's been here longer than you, and this is a different world. Once you get into a different world, if you don't assimilate, it's not fun, right? It's ironic. I challenge that with my players. I'm like, hey guys, here's our game plan, and they push back because they've played with different teams and done different things. And I sit there and listen to myself. I'm like, just do what I ask you to do, please, because I promise it's going to work. And then I think back, this question Otis brought up is like, wow, what a dipshit. So yeah.
Well, you set up the segue there to shift this into rugby. Talking about those different skill sets of the Air Force versus the Marines, I'm interested how that influences your coaching perspective for rugby. I know for a lot of people, not necessarily, positionless rugby has taken off a lot, but it's not the true old school forwards and backs split, a little bit more skill in the forwards, a little bit more smash mouth than the backs you see now. What's your perspective on those different skill sets and then using them in combination, trying to, like I said, connect those different groups like that?
So kind of, I got to track with me again. Kind of, can you clarify that question? Because
meaning like what's your coaching philosophy talking about those different skill sets, looking into the game of rugby? Then how do you approach it with, like, you got the guys who, the forwards banging down the front door, and then the speedsters fixing their hair out there, two very different skill sets. How do you marry those two?
I try to treat them exactly the same. What what I'd like to do at Babson and what I've tried to do for 10, this will be my 11th year. What I've tried to do is develop an overall well-rounded player. Guys that can play in the forwards or in the backs, no matter what the responsibility is or what their calling is. Very rarely have I taken a player and been like, okay, you're just going to be this guy. Because that's not what good rugby is these days. Players have to be multidimensional. You've got Joe Marler heading guys with giving a header ball for an assist, right? In the World Cup, you got forwards that are playing scrum half, passing the ball out to get a quick ball from the breakdown. And if we at Babson go along with the mindset that, well, we're just going to kind of keep these guys in their track, keep them in their lane, we won't evolve at the same pace of the game. So that if that answers your question, I try to keep them very, very versatile, which is why I love the action in the spring with going to sevens. We take all of our players and make them play sevens, even the big heavy guys, which we don't have that many of. But their skill sets get more accurate, and it helps them develop for 15s in the fall. So does that help you out? Would that answer you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's the interesting piece of approaching it, trying to be well-rounded there. What I'd be curious about a little bit, then you already kind of said you don't have as many of the big guys. That might answer this question a little bit. But then how do you find that balance of still having those skill sets? Because I know Dad, I think one of our Colorado rugby teams, we had a team like that where we were really playing like 15 backs. Like there were some bigger guys in that forward pack, but really we were just playing backs rugby, super fast, spinning the ball out wide, that kind of a game. And so I think there's an interesting balance there, trying to be well-rounded while still getting those individual skill sets. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I also came to be fair. I want to clarify. I don't want to sandbag anybody. We don't have the big prop type player. We've got plenty of size. I think we've got 5 guys, 6 guys over 6'4". We've got height. They've got physique. We just don't have the lumps, if you will. The big prop, the traditional guy. But in terms of how I coach it, I tell everybody, give me a team of players that can play back row, and give me a team who can play in the centers, and I can beat anybody. If you have the mindset, you don't have to have necessarily the size. You'll have the skill, the endurance, the intensity, the discipline around the breakdown, the accuracy, the hunter mindset, right? That mongrel that flankers and centers are born with, or should be born with. You could take that. That's the team I want, right? I'd rather have that. I'd rather have 23 guys that can play 7 and 12 than have 15 guys that are specialized, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
No, that makes great sense. And I want you to break it down a little bit more to help a few of our, which probably aren't a whole lot, a few of our non-rugby listeners, to kind of understand when we're talking about that, because I know we all understand, the open, the loose forwards and the centers and how that kind of intermixes. Can you talk to us about some of the characteristics of those positions and why that's where you want to set your team around?
Sure. I'd also like to add, I think there's a translation there on a personal level, and also from my experience in the Marine Corps being in Recon. One of the things that Recon's known for is they're the jack of all trades. I mean, they're jump, they dive, they're snipers, they're medics, they're navigators, they're EOD. They do all the components. Now, they jack of all trades, master of none. I call bullshit on that. In Recon, you're a jack of all trades, but you're a master of being a warrior. And I feel like a flanker and a center, those guys are your grunts, man. They're the guys that you got to have you want those guys in your foxhole, right? They're just, they're going to work. They're going to be hard. You're not going to complain about being cold. They're not going to complain about being raining. They don't care. They're just your workhorses. And guys with that mindset can play the game at any level, at any position, really. They just have to make sure they hone their own personal skills. I feel like the back row, the flankers, you guys, we talk about them being like into a dog breed, right? Your back row are basically like Australian Shepherds, right? They're constantly on the go, 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 go. They're aggressive. They get after it, or a hunting type dog like a Vizsla Hound or a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And then, you've got your props, which are like your St. Bernards or your Newfoundland Hounds, and your Scrum halves. Well, I don't really like to call myself a Jack Russell Terrier very often, but that's what you are, They're the little yippy, like a corgi. Yeah. Yep. That most players play against them want to just step on their face. And ironically, when I moved into playing hooker from playing scrum half for so many years, it didn't change. So I was just another scrum half on the field verbally, and it just made people really annoyed. And I never could see how it was annoying. We always had fun watching guys blow their tops and turn red, and and doing it on purpose, winding them up. But I think for my perspective, that center and that flanker are, they talk about the backbone of the team, the spine, your hooker, your 8, your scrum half, your 10, your 15. They call that the spine of the team, and a lot of teams can't. They focus on that's the most important piece. Now, granted, that's the most important skill piece, but if you don't have the core, which is your flanker and your center, if you don't have those guys, I don't care how technical 2, 8, 10, 9, 15 are, they're not going to win a lot of games because they got to get to the breakdown. They got to play the hard yards. They got to go in and make the big bashing tackles, big hard runs. So it's you need the mix. But give me a team full of guys that can go in and do the hard work. I'll take that over the spine, if you will, of highly technical players.
You mentioned I think you said you're coming into, this is your 11th season with Babson, is
Correct,
that right?
Correct.
So could you talk some about building up that culture? Because at year 11 now, that is the Carrick culture. You have built that up. You've recruited. You've got that all there. Could you talk about how you take this philosophy and then get that into a cultural level where all of the boys are understanding it?
Whew. So Cam, it's a loaded question. I got to Babson. The program was in a pretty rough spot in terms of administrative and on the field, and more of an animal house, old school rugby community. They brought me in and they said, you got to fix this. And I honestly don't believe they expected me to stay. I don't think they expected the program to thrive. I feel like they thought the program was going to fall apart. But again, I'm going to dig my heels in, and I'm not going to stop until we get to the point where the goal has been reached that the team set or that I've set with the people involved. And that's what we did. And 2018-19 was a really rough year for us. I almost gave it up. I was done, exhausted. We were having 5 to 10 guys at training. It was just bad. We'd had a couple of years of poor leadership, and mix that in with my career as a trainer. I was working a lot of hours at the gym. I wasn't able to put time in. Things kind of drifted away. Unfortunately, after COVID, right before COVID, picked up a handful of guys that really brought the culture right. They bought into what I believed in and what I was coaching and driving for. And the next thing, we got on the opportunity to get a couple of guys on board that were tight and follow the drive. So 2019, we had probably 7 or 8 kids on the freshman class that showed up. Had a recruit coming in the following year that was delayed because of COVID. And in his class, that was our captain, Reed Santos. His class had 5 or 6 players that had actually played before. And when I say recruit, Reed wasn't a recruit. I didn't do a whole lot. He's an entrepreneur. Babson was the first choice based on the school. And, the conversation was, look, if you come to Babson, you're not going to be part of a traditional rugby program. There's not a wall to hang your pictures on or be a Hall of Famer. There's not a wall for that. I said, but if you come here and you buy into what we're doing, you and I can build the wall for the future. And fortunately, Reed bought in. The guy's he's a great leader, very, very strong personality on the squad that kind of drives the intent, the message that we're delivering. And we picked up a handful of guys this last year that were top tier recruits that we started working on in December of last year. And so I don't know if there's a secret formula to it, man. It just you got to have all the pieces of the puzzle. You can have the best laid plan if you don't have a captain that wants to push it. If you don't have the players that want to buy in, none of it matters unless it's all together. And I feel like Babson's at this precipice of cohesion, and we're right at that point of a perfect storm where we have full buy-in by every player, even the new guys, even the top tier guys, buy in on the silly stuff that we do, the team building stuff, and it seems like they're having a good time, and that's the number one thing, is that they're grateful for the opportunity and they have a good time, and that's the culture we're building, and fortunately, it's going the right direction right now. So keep our fingers crossed.
Could you talk some about how that culture translates into performance? Because I think there's something that we, all three of us, I'm sure, understand as rugby coaches, where it's like, hey, just have fun, play some rugby. When in doubt, just play rugby, Dad. We've talked about that a bunch. And it should be fun. It should all be fun. But there's this kind of funny thing where you're talking about like high-level performance, like y'all win the national championship, and you're like, hey, guys, have fun out there. Like, could you talk a little bit about how that actually translates into performance? Because I think a lot of people don't see that connection.
And it's definitely there. To that national championship run last spring in sevens, we got there by running a specific game plan, and it was clinical. I think we were 26-1. The only team we lost to was a team from Canada. We had 804 points to 160 over 27 games. We were competitive. We beat a bunch of D1 schools, and we opened a lot of people's eyes. And we did it with a lot of players that never really played rugby. We had only two players had a lot of seasoned rugby, and only one was sevens experience, other than learned at Babson. But the game plan was in place, and semifinal game, our captain decided he was just going to kind of do his thing, and we were in the stadium, and he bounced off the process, and we found ourselves in the hole for the first time all year. And he brought it back, and funny enough, when they played the system and the structure, it was a lot more fun because winning happens that way. Ironically, we played a game on Friday night against Holy Cross that was a big smack in the face, which the boys decided they want to try to do things differently. Not adjust to the referee, not adjust to the field size, not adjust to the things that we talked about. And, at halftime we were up 7-0. And 2 weeks before we were up 59-0 at half on the same team. So you can give all the credit you want to Holy Cross, but for sure they came out to play and they were prepared. But our guys forgot the simple thing, which is that structure and shape, which allows you to have fun and allows you to be creative from a standard position, right? And that is going out and having fun to play rugby. Cam, as a player, you think, he's putting handcuffs on me, making me, I got to run this structure or this pattern. And you're like, yeah. And once you do that 3 or 4 times, the defense does what we want it to do. And we're playing checkers, we're playing chess, they're playing checkers, and you can go run and have fun, right? Once they figure that out, it's a little bit easier once they see it, right? And does that answer your question on that?
Yeah, definitely. And go ahead, Dan. I see you got one.
Yeah. Well, what I'd love for you to share with us, because in a unique sense, you get a little bit of recruiting, but generally speaking, you deal with the hand that you're dealt, right?
Yeah. Up to this point, for sure.
So how do you identify those leaders? What's the characteristics that you're looking for when you got 30 boys out there between 18 and 22 years old, and you say, that guy, he's the one?
Well, it usually comes from more than just a day or two. It comes from the guys who, when I make the instructions at the beginning of the season, hey, this is what I expect on the sideline for setting up your gear. It's the guy that I see who zips his bag up, makes sure everything's in order before he steps foot on the field. It's the guy that when he crosses the line, the touch line going onto the field, he's in a jog mode. He's never walking. He's always dialed in. He's the guy that doesn't side chat. No matter how much he knows, when the coaches or teammates talking, he doesn't speak. He listens. The guy that is the first one there, last one to leave. We have a shed that doubles as our locker room. It's the guy that sweeps it before practice. It's the guy that sweeps it after. Those are the guys that I look to. The one that asks, "Hey, Carrick, what do you want to do about the jerseys? Do we want the, who's going to watch, how should we collect the jerseys today? What do you want to have set up for training today?" The guys that take that initiative. Also the guys that take responsibility. If I call them out on something and they make an excuse, they typically they're not the guy. They make a mistake, their hands up, I won't do it again, and they don't, right? They stick, they have the integrity to that. That would be my first indicator. Also, with the captain I have right now, he came in with some international experience, and he was an All-American last year in small college, and he'll be another All-American this year. He played PR7s, and he's knocking on the door to get on the USA squad. So he's got that next level competitiveness, that next level background, understands what real leadership is and can apply it. When he graduates this year, we're not going to have a vacuum, because I've got so many young players with the same mindset due to his leadership. It's going to be pretty tough to pick one or two guys, and we're just going to rely on the squad to kind of drive itself, hopefully.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wine.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend. From his appearances on the show, they have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this: adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out, or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description in the show. Click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount.
You said this already about his leadership ability of, I think the way you said it was even no matter how much he knows to let the other people talk. So, to not jump in, to let the other guys go through it and those kind of analysis. I think that's such a big piece. How do you apply that for yourself? Because I think, especially we start talking coaching for a lot of other American sports, especially we always like to, rip on our football coaches, but it is very like, I am the boss. Here's this, here's this, here's this. And rugby is really different. You can kind of step back and just let the parts flow on their own. How do you build that into the team and into that culture?
Well, I'm still learning. Cam, I'm far from good at it. I feel like this year's the biggest learning curve I've ever had as a coach, even though, it's, year 11, but I've actually been involved with coaching since I started playing. So I've had more challenges this year in coaching because of the diversity, the disparity of level of players, the number of players per coaches, and the amount of pressure that we've put on ourselves, and that's obviously out there in the community. I'm still learning. I definitely don't like the this way or no way mindset. I like to be collaborative. And one of the challenges when you do that is we need to be collaborative because it inspires growth and leadership and maturity in the young men. But at the same time, you kind of at this level, at college level, even if you're talking about the elite, you're dealing with 21-year-old young men, and they may have played 7 years of rugby, but 4 of it was under 15s, right? We're not talking about managing and leading men. We're not talking about really challenging situations, and so sometimes I've given them a little bit too much credit and try to let it go organically. And then I have to get in and say, hey, man, at the end of the day, it's on my shoulders if we win or lose. It's on my shoulders if this is successful or not. This is how we're going to do it until we get it on our own. And I put them on a pretty tight azimuth. And as they get down the path, I open that azimuth up. I give them, the limiting features are a little bit wider each day, as long as they're on the right track. That's my objective, and that's my goal. I'm struggling to get there. And it's good, though, because it makes me work even harder to find the right balance and what's the right limiting feature for these guys based on their abilities and their skills. And by skills, I mean leadership, not on the pitch. I mean,
right.
You mentioned earlier, and kind of staying in that same thought process of challenges, you mentioned earlier you hit that low point. What was it that pulled you out of that? Because I've had some clients and various folks that, everybody knows about Sarah Blakely with her Spanx thing, and she went to 27 stores, and everybody always talks about, keep going. But what if it wasn't the 27th? Would she have gone to 30? Would she have gone to 36? You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So you hit that spot 18, 19, and you were like, what was the decision process to go to that 28th store, if you will?
I wasn't done.
Yeah.
I felt like if I walked away at that point, it would have been at that point 6 years of not wasted, but 6 years of effort, and knowing that I made a mistake with the way I managed the team to get it to that point, and talking to alumni and talking to people, mentors and peers. They're like, look, man, you're not recruiting kids at that point. You're dealing with what you're dealt, and you just may not have had the right leadership in there. And I at the time I bought into that, and I almost let that win. But I realized that that's why they hired me, to be the guy to manage and lead and find that leader in somebody that wasn't there. And I knew that if I walked away, it would have been a fail, and I wasn't up for that.
That gets into something that I think a lot of American rugby coaches have dealt with and been through, which is that commitment to the team, and how so often it is like, Dad, we've joked about it. It's one person who gives their whole life for 10 years. And then whether it's something with the club or they have something change in their life and they move on, whatever it is, it winds up being the weight on this one person to build up that club. Could you talk a little bit about your perspective carrying that weight for Babson, and, I guess maybe even looking to build, I don't know, actually, I'll save that for a second question.
I mean, while the weight may have seemed to be on my shoulders, it was not. I had a team around me, our alumni director, Ken Jasper, and Steve Ashikian and Tim DeMello, the guys that started this club back in 1979. They were always in my pocket in terms of in my foxhole. Like they were guys I could count on. We made a run at the Nationals in 17 and 18, or 16 and 17 and sevens as well. Had great leadership. In fact, I just saw two of my players came to a game on Friday night. One of my captains and a lacrosse crossover who was a powerhouse player, and those guys were part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, which was the reason why I wanted to stay. And I said I can find this again. And, in 2018, the fall of 18, we had 4 guys at preseason. And that fall, I think we had 20 guys total. And I didn't have very many rugby players. I didn't have a lot of guys I put in my foxhole at the beginning. And then at the end, sure enough, there were some, and they carried us over through the spring of 19. And then once that happened, we got Reed. I knew Reed was coming on board, was going to be coming on board in the fall of 20. And, that was a big piece of the puzzle, knowing that I was going to have that type of player to help build from. With the alumni support we had. And, that had a lot to do with it. Another thing had a lot to do with it was where I was living. I lived 5 minutes away from the field. It was easy. I was working at a gym right next to the facility. Couldn't have been any easier for me. It was kind of a no-brainer. Like I can still do this. And I, similarly, the challenge was I was involved with the woman who's on my wife, and her oldest son was playing high school soccer. Youngest son was playing club soccer. And, I was actually, I got to enjoy being a dad, even though it wasn't a dad, right? I mean, so it kind of made it easy. That perfect storm was like, wow, I can go do these things and be there for these kids and be there for this woman that I care about and be the family guy that I hadn't had the opportunity to be yet. And compound that with the fact that the team was kind of falling apart. It was almost easy. But I did a soul search and found out that I wasn't going to quit.
That's all right, man. No, this is all good.
It comes from my old man. He left. He always. He never really fully admitted it, but I know he regretted leaving Clemson. He was chasing the bigger pie, I'm going to go to the SEC. And I felt like if I left and walked away, I was giving up an opportunity to carry out his legacy.
That's awesome. Legacy is such an important driver, and in that fact that if you don't start thinking about that, because it comes back to purpose, right? Understanding what your purpose is, who you are, what's driving you, what's fueling you, what's keeping you going, what gets you up in the morning, what makes you stay up late at night because you need to put in the extra time to do something, to succeed at something, to serve that person, those people that you're wanting to do. And that drives towards that legacy and what you're creating. And I think that's an awesome and powerful thing to have to fuel you. And it leads me to something I was thinking about, because I'm always curious about this. I had the great fortune of, when I was coaching, it's the opposite of what you were dealing with. You were given, you stepped into a club, had to build it up. I stepped into a club that was up here. It was at this level of success, and to try and sustain that, and then keep in mind when things start to drop off, how do you keep going? How do you do that? How do you define success? And that's what I was really curious about in that athletics. Have fun, boys, right? I said the same thing every game. Have fun, right? But in the end, at that level, success is what goes, whether I'm putting a tick mark in the W column or the L column. How do you manage that with your club in that sense of, and maybe the question really becomes, how are you defining success for a season? I think that might be a good way to dive into that.
Okay, that's a good one. It's very good because Otis, you hit on something. The check of the win or the loss column. One of my philosophies, and I've stuck to it since I got there. I came up with this. Just the way I word it to my guys is, look, if you don't go out there and give everything you got, and you play your ass off, you do everything right, and you lose the game, and you don't, and you learn a lot about yourself, you win. The way I make it, I feel like I've made it click to them is I explain to them, like whatever that scoreboard says, the lights go off always. The lights go off, records get lost, ink fades, all that stuff goes away. What you take away from the game introspectively is what defines if it was a win or a loss for us. And as a team, as long as we know what we build from and the mistakes we made and the challenges we had to overcome, if we overcame them, how we faltered, where we failed, where we corrected, if those things all end up in a positive, then it's a win for us. I've stuck by that, and that's part of the reason why I stayed, because in 2018 we didn't win a damn game on the board. We lost a lot, and by a lot of points, but the guys never quit. They never got soft. They bowed up. They did what they're supposed to do. They dug in, and they got better each week. It didn't show on the scoreboard because it just didn't. They weren't there. But and I learned how to be a better coach that way. I learned how to coach a team full of guys that weren't as successful on the field. I learned how to find the positives in the negatives a lot harder, a lot more frequently than I do now. And I feel that set me up to be a much better coach down the road. Does that answer your question on what it means to be successful for us?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think that's a really unique thing to think about. That I think more folks, all of us, need to have a better understanding of. We talk about it in business. Fail fast, fail forward, fail often, right? And I know you learn the same thing in the Marines, maybe the Air Force, but definitely the Marines. That failure means somebody dies, right? I mean, and that's ingrained in me. So I don't believe in that fail fast, fail forward, fail often BS that all the little entrepreneur whiz kids say. I look at it as I'm adjusting fire. When I squeeze that trigger off Saturday morning on that big 6x6 elk, and I won't miss. But if I happen to, I'm going to adjust fire and I'm going to squeeze a second shot. Right? That's what's going to happen. It's not I failed and roll over and learn lessons, and no, it's this kind of stuff. And I think that is such a great lesson, not just on the rugby pitch or the hunting field, in life. Right? It is how do I missed my target. How do I adjust? Which way is the wind blowing? Was it low? Did I misestimate the range? All those sort of things. Wind direction, wind speed, all that sort of things. What do I do to adjust? And how quickly can I do it? I think that's an interesting measure of success for a rugby player also.
Oh, absolutely.
He screwed it up. How quickly did you adjust next time?
Well, you've probably been familiar with the saying, right? We're not judged. I never judge you by your actions that you have done. I'm judging you by the actions that you're going to do. And that's how I tell my guys, look, man, you're only as good as your last mistake, right? How you overcame it. That's it. And It's always climbing a mountain, man. Climbing a
You
mountain.
know, talking about those losing seasons and being in that position where you're not winning many games, I think there's an interesting lesson there for leadership. I would love to get your perspective on of how do you get the boys to see the big picture, to see those little victories. Like, you know, basically, what's that post game chat look like that keeps the guys around and showing up to practice the next week, even though they just lost by 70 points? Because that's a really difficult thing as a leader. You know, when you're winning, it's really easy to keep the energy up and all those kind of things. But when you're in that dark spot, to keep the guys moving forward is really hard. What are some of your like leadership insights into that?
Well, as I said before, man, I'm still learning. I'm fortunate that we haven't been in that situation this year.
Mm-hmm.
But we have put ourselves in a few danger zones, right? We've definitely put ourselves in a kill spot for sure.
Mm-hmm.
When you know you're up 7-0 on a team where everybody in the world thought you were going to be, you know, everybody in the world except you, because I know the coach and I know their program. I knew they were be coming out like banshees and hungry and bringing way more to the table than we could ever imagine. Mostly because our guys haven't had to play from that spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we how do I handle it is, you know, a lot of times I just remind the guys that our purpose isn't to win the game on the scoreboard. Our purpose is to win the game for us, how we win a game, whether it's on the scoreboard or not. It's, are we coming away with the things that we need to improve for the next week? How kids stay on board with that after a bad loss. If they don't have the character, I can't make them do that. You know, I can just inspire them maybe to stick around. But for the most part, man, they just got to want to be better. And if they do, telling them and challenging them that that's the only way to get better is to get back out here and grind. And they put it in, it'll happen, you know, and I'm confident that that's what we've done. In 2022 fall last year, we started out without our captain, didn't have him until the last game of the season. And we took a couple big lumps early and we built as a team around not having him, and several players not around the first 2 weeks. We weren't ready and we got beat. We had a lot of young, inexperienced players, and I feel like we did the right thing by reminding the guys that, you know, you're not defined by that loss. You're defined by what you do next week. That's how you make your decision if you've won or lost that game. You know, if we win the next week and we fixed all our problems or all the challenges we came up with in the last week, then we won that game too. Whether or not the scoreboard says differently. So.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
Y'all, don't leave your team to struggle alone on their own. If you're not giving them the tools they need to be great, then they're not going to be great. You can't expect them to. So give them the tools they need to be successful. Love that.
You've mentioned a couple of times, still getting there, still working to get there. Could you share with us what's a resource, system, process, you define it, that you tap back into to continue that self-improvement path?
I got to believe it has to do with growing up in it. You know, my dad was a coachaholic. He nothing was ever done well enough or thorough enough, even when it was time to win. You know, when the scoreboard was on 80-0, 75-0, he was already thinking about next week, or, hey, what did we do wrong? What can we, you know, they talk about, you know, nature, nurture. And I literally grew up in an environment from the age of 0 to 15, experiencing that on a very intimate, personal, one-to-one level. Because at the age of 9, I was with the football team every Friday night. And Saturday day, I was a manager. I traveled with the team. I was integral. I was integrated into the team as a young person. Staff meetings, team meetings, pregame. You know, while I had a job as a manager, I was a ball boy. I also had to shine helmets. I had to polish shoes. I had to hang gear. I had to wash clothes. You know, so I learned innately, like, it just became second nature that that's just how you do it, man. You don't, I don't understand anyone. I don't grasp. I respect people who have their own way. I'm not critical or judge people who don't think this way, but I don't understand not having drive to be the very, very best that you can possibly be, and not to use an Army slogan, right? At every capacity in my life, anything I've put my foot into, stepped onto the field about, no matter what it was, I always had aspirations of being the very, very best. And it didn't matter if I was out of my mind delusional. That was how I trained, and that's how I worked. You know, and you know, I can honestly say I don't think there's anybody that really knows me that would argue that. In fact, most of them would say he's delusional, but man, in his head, he was going to do it. And that's how he trained, and that's how he worked. And the only place I didn't do that in is school. You know, I didn't do that in academics, sadly. And I know my mom will be listening, and she'll be nodding her head and say, damn it, if you could have just done it just one way, we'd be all right. But, you know.
That's why we're such good rugby coaches, I think. You can't do both.
Well, like I said, I have so much to learn as a coach, not just a rugby coach, but rugby for sure. I mean, you know, we grew up. I didn't start playing until I was 26, and growing up and playing in Alabama for a few years, and then Louisiana. Like, I wasn't exposed to high level, what I would call high level coaching. You know, there weren't guys on the coaching staff at Shreveport, albeit one of the best coaches I've ever had, John Cush. And, you know, Cush took a bunch of guys that were far from being rugby players, and we went deep into the Division II playoffs because we had a really simple game plan. And I mean, it was simple, but we did come at you with everything we had. And, you know, he was a great coach to that. He was an excellent coach to that capacity. But in terms of like really technical coaching, I didn't ever really get that. And so a lot of the things that I might have gotten it later with, you know, Air Force or, you know, touring sides with guys that I've played with, you know, Mystic River later on in my career, Wolfhounds, and those teams, those coaches had some good coaches, but the really top level, you know, I think you know what I'm talking about, Cam, where you got guys that are out there with, they know the drill goes right to the skill, right to the game. It's seamless. That's stuff that I've had to figure out on my own. And I feel like my career as a personal trainer helps that because of the progression-digression connection. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And before we wrap up, Dax, I know you're looking to wrap up. I got a quick one. I want all three of us to answer on this because this is a little bit of a fun one. But Carrick, you talked a little bit about what kind of mentality, like for the positions, like you want a team of flankers, you want a team of centers type thing. Where do you think, if you had like your one best player, where do you think your best player on the team should be? What position?
Ooh. All 15?
Out of all 15.
Yeah. Man, that's a loaded one. Loaded. I think it's going to depend on the supporting cast. I can't answer that as an individual player. I have to see his supporting cast. If he's a master at developing the play and developing the game, and he's got a great foot, great game management, but we don't have a scrum half who can get him the ball, I would never put him at 10. I would make him a scrum half. Similarly, if he's a powerhouse, like just monster, why would I put him at center if we can't control the scrum? There's all those pieces of the puzzle, and that's one of the beautiful things about rugby. It's not checkers, right? So not trying to trip up on your question, but man, it's that's the best answer I got. I would say I want him on the field.
I'll throw one more at you though, and because I dealt with this on one of my teams, it may have been one of the state teams. I put the kid who had the most knowledge of the game, who was an okay back, the most knowledge of the game at 15. And had him calling things out to the team because he could see something developing. So that just kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier with the backbone.
Right.
But in that same sense, I mean, and to answer for me, and it's probably just because it's my personal favorite position, to answer the question, I always go with 8-man because that guy is such a critical piece of connecting the backs to the forward. But you're right. That's the beautiful thing about rugby is because you can have great players, but you can't have a superstar put the team on the back and carry the team out because one guy against 15 doesn't work.
You can at a lower level, right? In the easy games, one guy can put the team on his back, but you can't do that against a team full of players. A team,
right? So right. I mean, I learned this lesson from James years ago. James Patterson, Camden. That you take at the high school level, you take the best athlete and you put them at 10. Because then you're only making one pass. And probably 75% of the time he's going to get his hands on the ball. And then he's just going to run through the other team, right? I mean, that was the easy thing at that level. But anything beyond that where you got a super athlete and not a rugby team you're playing against, man, you bring that rugby team up just a little bit and super athlete is discounted.
Oh, yeah.
No longer valuable. All right, Camden, answer your own question.
So I would say I agree with both of you, Carrick. That very well.
Well, that was easy.
To move the guys
what the hell is that all about, man?
But I'd say 8-man. I'd say 8-man too, because to me, you can affect the game the most in the loose forward positions. I lean towards 7 a little bit, but usually a 7 you can't use in the line out. So I'll go back to the 8-man there. Orchestrate that attack and be that connector, like you said, Dad, between the forwards and the backs. But also, come on, I played 8. You gotta have a good 8.
It definitely helped.
Yeah, I wish I would have had a good 8-man when I was still
gloves are coming off.
Yep. Well, and it helps me with what I learned too, because I've seen the positions because you started at 26, I started at 50, 52. I think I actually played after I'd coached for 3 years, but I've seen the positions represented in all kinds of different ways on the pitch, with letters and different numbers and diamonds and all kinds of, but never dogs. never dogs. And I'm picturing. I got way too much metal in my spine to play, but I'm picturing old boys rugby that instead of having numbers on the back, they get a dog, Australian Shepherd,
Props have English bulldogs.
bulldog,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
little greyhound. You know, that's
And you know,
so that is what
out on the wing, make it a whippet. You know, one of those like little Italian greyhound things.
Oh yeah.
There you go. And the halfback would be a picture of Cam to his little dog Gumbo.
Oh yeah, he's yapping like one.
Camden, what'd you learn?
I just want to add on to that. We do an event here with U of A with PAC, Pima Animal Shelter here, Pima County Animal Shelter, and I'm thinking they bring the puppies out. If we could get 15 different puppies, we could assign them to the positions. I could be a cool little promotion. So I have to think about that one.
Oh, it's like the what is it? The Bud Light, the Puppy Bowl, right? In the Super Bowl.
Oh my gosh!
That's right.
Yeah. We gotta get Puppy Rugby World Cup. All right, write that one down. But no, for me, I think it's really funny because we talk about like the have fun, and I've said this many a time, like boys, let's have fun out there, and I think it's really fun. We go beat the crap out of people and win the game, and I think there's something, Carrick, when we were talking about that, it's like, well, what's the flanker's definition of fun? Let's go put the guy in the dirt. And if that's fun to you, then you go play a fun game, you're going to get good results out there. Right. So I think that's a really interesting thing. Have fun, but what's your definition of fun? For me, it was stealing lineouts, poaching the ball, all those things. That's the most fun thing I could do. So that's the fun way to win the game.
Right.
Carrick, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
A couple things. I learned that I am overly emotional when I'm overly passionate, and I already knew that, but it just, it's a reminder. The thing I really learned is I do this because I love it.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. And that's how we should all live, though.
Yeah.
With having that much passion for what you're doing, where you're spending your time. I'll throw this out there as a PSA. Hey, folks, look back at your calendar for the last week. See where you spent your time. Did you spend your time where you love to spend your time, where you have passion to spend your time? That right there is a good test. Mm-hmm. Carrick, how do folks find you? Learn more about this beautiful, passionate thing called rugby that you have.
Well, it's rugby's everywhere. You just got to open your eyes a little bit, be willing to open your heart, and accept a bunch of weirdos that could probably be considered wackadoos everywhere else in the world, except in the rugby community, right? Now, so Babson, we are at www.beaverrugby.com or babsonrugby.com. On Instagram, it's Babson Rugby. One of the great things about being at Babson is the school itself is taking we're at a perfect storm. I mean, the school just got voted or named the 10th best college in America by Wall Street Journal. It's the #1 school for entrepreneurship for the last 27-something years in the U.S. It's also Wall Street Journal named it the #1 school in preparation for work. Like, when you graduate, you're prepared to go to job right away. You don't need any extra training. And it's one of the top 7 or 8 in return on investments. So we're at a position where people want to come here to school, and adding the fact that the rugby program has taken another level up and starting to show promise to be successful for more than a couple of days. We're hoping that that's going to have an impact on our applications, and the school itself is going to get inundated with applications because of this new ranking. And we're hoping to add to a few extra international applications with guys from overseas that never even heard of us before, right? But I'll always take the local guys that want to play hard and got the right mindset.
Love it.
Awesome. Hey, man, great having you on the show today. We really appreciate you carving out your
Thanks,
time.
man. You guys are fantastic.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Carrick Pell, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share with other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.